Real detail.
I cannot get rid.
It's so weird. It's not open. Okay, there we go.
Nobody else ever does it this detail. Quick spin around the room, but they leave off. Nobody else ever does it.
Okay. If you've been on Facebook within the past week, you have most likely heard of Brittany Maynard. Brittany Maynard is a 29-year-old woman who is planning to end her life in a few short weeks on November 1st. A few months back, she was diagnosed with cancer and a brain tumor. She was told she had 10 years to live. However, those years became months as the disease spread at a much more rapid pace than the doctors had anticipated. She was told she only had months, and this is when Brittany decided that she wanted to take her life rather than let this disease consume her with pain and then take her life away from her. She chose November 1st because her husband's birthday is October 30th, and she was hoping to enjoy one last birthday with him. The topic of euthanasia has been a hot one for many years, fading in and out whenever a situation such as Brittany's arises. Much like with any controversial topic like this, there are people who are for it and against it. However, as a Christian, this situation sounds too much like playing God to me. I completely understand where Brittany is coming from. If I were her, I would not want to suffer either. However, as Christians, I think we have a duty to be pro-life in every situation. The first recorded encounters of euthanasia were way back in 5th century BC, where, before Christianity, Greeks and Romans often performed mercy killings so people would not have to suffer. In the 13th century, Christians and Jews began to oppose it, just as they oppose suicide, because they believe it is against the responsibilities we Christians have to God. In the 17th century, American colonies also opposed euthanasia and suicide. They saw it as unnatural. In the late 18th century, a religious movement gained a lot of momentum, and the rejection of suicide and euthanasia remained firm, even after many of the new states decriminalized suicide in the wake of the Revolutionary War. The majority of Americans rejected suicide's common law punishment, but no matter how sympathetic they were toward the suicide's family, most Americans stopped far short of condoning self-murder. As late as the antebellum period, there exists in New York a firm consensus against suicide and mercy killings. In 1828, New York became the first state to outlaw assisted suicide, causing many other states to follow. During the late 1800s, Samuel Williams began to advocate using morphine and other drugs for euthanasia. His proposal received serious attention in the medical journals and at scientific meetings. Still, most physicians held the view that pain medication could be administered to alleviate pain, but not the death. In 1885, the American Medical Association officially opposed euthanasia. In 1905, Ohio tries to pass a bill to legalize euthanasia, but it is denied. The dispute over mercy killing caught fire in the 1930s, making these years a pivotal junction in the history of euthanasia in America. With the coming of the Depression and more troubled economic times, Americans began talking about suicide and controlled death. Public opinion polls indicated in 1937 that 45% of Americans had caught up with the belief that the mercy killing of infants born permanently deformed or mentally handicapped was permissible. In the following years, many different societies for legalizing euthanasia were formed. In 1990, Dr. Jack Kevorkian helped assist in a suicide for the first time, rising controversy even more. In November 1994, the Oregon Death with Dignity Act was passed. This was the beginning of many other states trying to do the same thing. Although the act was defeated in many states, it passed in Washington, Montana, Vermont, and New Mexico, and those still stand today. As previously stated, this topic has two sides to it. While I am personally against it, I think it unfair to not inform you of the reasons why people are for it. The first reason people are in favor is because they think we need it. They think by taking your own life, you can die with dignity rather than suffer for a painful, incurable disease. They also argue that it can help shorten the suffering and grief of that patient's loved ones. The second reason people are in favor is because they want it. They think the overall consensus is pro-euthanasia. Not only that, but they think every patient should have the choice of the way they want to die. They say death is a private matter, and if you aren't hurting anyone else, then no one should be able to have a say in it. They also make the argument that people put their pets down, so they don't have to suffer, so why should it be different for humans? According to them, illness can take away autonomy and dignity, leaving you with no quality of life. Euthanasia allows you to take back control in deciding to die. The third reason people are in favor is because, according to them, we can control it. They strongly believe that euthanasia can be safely regulated by government legislation. Not to mention, oftentimes a lot of money is put into trying to save people who are inevitably going to die, when that money could be used on people who actually have a chance at living. Some Christians even support euthanasia. They say, God is love. Christianity is love and compassion. Keeping someone in pain and suffering is not loving, it is evil. They think euthanasia can be the most loving action and the best way of putting agape love into practice. They also say that according to Genesis 1:28, humans were given dominion over all living things by God, so we should be able to choose for ourselves. They say John 10:10 states that Jesus came so people could have life in all of its fullness. This means quality of life. If someone has no quality of life, then euthanasia could be good. They continue their arguments by saying God gave humans free will. We should be allowed to use free will to decide when our lives end. And finally, they say, do to others as you would have them do to you. How would you want to be treated in this situation? One thing I have been taught in Bible college is to not take verses out of context. I am not God and cannot speak for certain, but I do not think these verses are being used in the manner they were intended. In my opinion, the reasons for being against euthanasia trump those that are in favor for it simply because they make more sense. For starters, alternative treatment and cares are available. Hospice is one of these, which can help put people almost completely out of pain. Oftentimes people think hospice is just a place, and it surely can be, but in its original form, it is a type of care. People usually want to be at home during their final days or months, and hospice makes this possible and as comfortable as one can. Hospice also offers grief and bereavement services to family members. Those who are pro-euthanasia argue that it helps the family and loved ones and doesn't draw out their grief processes as much. However, that is still grief they have to deal with. Hospice helps ease that process. It has been proven, according to nhpco.org, that those who are in hospice care can live up to 6 months longer and enjoy more time with their family and loved ones. Hospice assists death, but in the healthy, legal way. It gives the person excellent pain-relieving care, helps the family with the process, and allows the person's natural timeline take its course instead of interfering. Euthanasia is also a slippery slope. Many people fear that if euthanasia were to be legalized, that would just pave the way for non-voluntary and involuntary euthanasia. It would give doctors the power to decide if one's life was worth fighting for. Some patients who are fighting incurable diseases often have lapses of judgment and are not always in their right state of mind. In a moment of frustration, they could sign their life away, and the doctor would have the power to euthanize despite whether or not the patient changed their mind. That is scary and not how life is intended to be. As Americans, we are given the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Legalizing euthanasia would most definitely take away our rights to life. Euthanasia also can never be controlled. It has been legal in the Netherlands for a few years, and reports say that it's out of control. According to LifeSiteNews.com, in 2010, 23% of all euthanasia deaths were not reported. Not only that, but it is rising by 19% or more each year. In 2011, deaths by euthanasia had more than doubled from the year it was first legalized. I find it hard to believe that all of those people needed or were even eligible for euthanasia. It is causing people to be killed off when they have many years, even decades, left to enjoy life. The number of assisted suicides is also going up. Although euthanasia is basically assisted suicide, the difference is that those who euthanize have some sort of illness where they are headed in the direction of death, where with assisted suicide, the person just wants to end their life. The number of assisted suicides in the Netherlands increased from 192 in 2010 to 226 in 2011. These are people who are ending their lives for no reason, yet those who help are getting away with it. These people have loved ones that are experiencing great pain due to their loss. Euthanasia is increasing this pain, not easing it, as those who are in favor would argue. Last but not least, legalizing euthanasia would impose a duty on doctors to kill. This is the exact opposite of what a doctor is supposed to do. Doctors are supposed to provide care that will better the health of their patient. Euthanasia completely contradicts the main point of the healthcare system, not to mention adds even more stress to the healthcare professionals who will be responsible for doing this. I personally cannot imagine having one death on my conscience, let alone hundreds. This will definitely lead to emotional and psychological problems for some doctors. As Christians, we cannot be in support of this, despite how much we want to help people out of their pain and misery. Chuck Colson, an evangelistic Christian leader, states, "One of our major problems as Americans today is that we want only the joy, not the sorrow. Many of us mistakenly believe that life is life only when it is healthy and comfortable, but God knows better. To make us whole, He makes sure that we experience every season, not only the springtime of youth, but also the austerity of winter." This quote could not ring more true for me, and I'm sure for many of you. However, Jesus tells us there will be suffering. For whatever reason, times of suffering are usually the times where there is the most love and community. People forget the differences they have and focus on the short amount of time they have left with their friend, family member, etc. Taking our own lives is not heroic. It is in fact the opposite. Dying with dignity is living out life until the Lord calls us home. As humans, we are already too much of control freaks. We like to plan out our days, know exactly what we're going to do, and have complete control of situations we find ourselves in. Having control of our death as well is interfering too much with God. I can completely sympathize with Brittany Maynard. But how many days is she taking that could be spent with her husband and family? How many memories is she missing out on by deciding when to end her life? According to LifeSiteNews.com, only 63% of people who receive the euthanization pills will actually take them. Until November 1st, we will never know if Brittany actually decides to take them, but personally I hope she doesn't. I hope she realizes the memories, support, and love she could be receiving by pressing on through her illness and being an inspiration for all.